Hey, folks, just bear with me for a moment, folks. We'll be doing some nice stuff here in a minute. I just have to delete some stuff and so forth, but we're going to be talking about AEW. Uh, yeah. We're going to be talking about some stuff here. It's going to be fun and good times, great oldies. So let's get into it. I'm just adjusting some of my stuff here on the old StreamYard, which was always fun. It always tells you got to do stuff when you're already in the middle of doing other stuff. Okay, so I think I just freed up some space. Let's talk about AEW Forbidden Door. If you have any comments, if you watched the show or if you didn't watch the show. But basically, I'll paint the picture for you. I'm a painter of words, I'm a painter of pictures with words as my paint. And I went to the movie theater. I bought my ticket in advance about 8 or 9 days ago. Reserved the seat that I wanted. Turned out to be a good choice of seat. I would say there was about 40 people in the theater. It was a 94-person capacity theater. I would say 35 to 40 perhaps in there. Uh, there was some families. There was a family with a kid. There was some people like friends going together, some solo artists going. So it was a good mix of a crowd, respectful crowd as always for these AEW screenings. No one sat right next to me, which I'm happy about. Thank you for the heart, whoever gave me the heart. Appreciate that. If you're watching on YouTube or Facebook or whatever, welcome to the fun. So when I got to the theater, get to the movie theater, I was about 7 minutes late. I pulled over to some place for a meal beforehand. What's up, Jeff? How's it going, buddy? Actually, this took place in your hometown, Jeff. I think you live in Chicago. I don't know if you're a pro wrestling fan, but tonight, All Elite Wrestling teamed up with New Japan Pro Wrestling in the United Center in Chicago for a big pro wrestling pay-per-view extravaganza, which I attended in a sense by going to the movie theater here in Jacksonville, Florida, where I watched this thing on the big screen. So I don't know if you're a pro wrestling enthusiast or not these days, Jeff. I think you might be a little bit of an old school fan, but it was good because the wrestling was pretty good tonight. So what this was kind of a they call it the Forbidden Door. Basically it's making allusions to the fact that wrestling promotions are not supposed to work with each other. And in this show, Jeff, and anyone else who's watching, basically the New Japan Pro Wrestling group, which was started in part by Antonio Inoki, and the All Elite Wrestling group, which was started in part by Tony Khan, the son of Ahmed Khan, I believe is his name, who owns the Jacksonville Jaguars football team. Of course, some wrestlers, Cody Rhodes, the Young Bucks, Kenny Omega, Adam Page, and so forth, all created their own wrestling group about 3 years ago. So here we are with this, exciting pro wrestling show. It's not WWE or WWF, as you might remember it, Jeff. It's a totally different group of people. And I'm a pretty hardcore wrestling fan. But to be honest with you, one thing about me in pro wrestling is I have a lot of respect for the Japanese pro wrestling culture and the Japanese pro wrestlers, especially. But it's hard for me to watch Japanese wrestling if it doesn't have English speaking commentary. I find that commentary and what is happening and what's going on and what's the story of this match, that's important to me as a wrestling fan. So yes, I do have some Blu-rays and DVDs of Japanese wrestling from the 90s and the 80s and all types of good stuff. But I've always had an issue where I can't really sit there and watch it for too long because without the English speaking commentary, I'm totally lost. But that would not be a problem tonight. We had a pretty good commentary team. Kevin Kelly, Taz, Excalibur, Jim Ross came in later. You had the behind the scenes guys, Tony Schiavone and others doing interviews. So let's start off. The first match, when I got to the theater, what I was going to say was that the screen was black. I was about 7 minutes late, and some guy had to go tell the kids at the movie theater to put the pay-per-view on the screen. This happens a lot. If you tend to go to movie theaters to watch closed circuit events, whether it's wrestling or boxing or anything UFC, a lot of times the people in the audience have to tell the teenagers how to run the fucking show. Because typically they just have to push a button, and that's pretty much what happened. So when I got there, some guy had already taken care of business. I was appreciative of this guy because normally I'm the guy that has to go and tell the fucking teenagers to put the goddamn show on. But this other guy did it, and I tried to make a little joke with him. I said, hey, we wouldn't want to miss that QT Marshall match. And the guy said, well, we're all going to miss it if they don't play the show. So he didn't understand my joke that I was basically saying QT Marshall is not really worth watching. Although he actually is. He is a decent wrestler. The way they book him is just he's a fool. But QT Marshall and Aaron Solo teaming up. I think they still use the Nightmare Faction name, which is interesting because Cody Rhodes is now gone. And they fought Goto and Yoshihashi, Hiroki Goto and Yoshihashi. Like I said, I missed half of this match. It was what it was. It was a good way to start off. And Goto and Yoshihashi won. I really don't have any judging for that match. I mean, I guess I'll give it a, for what it was, I guess I'll give it a C, B, something like that. But I am kind of cheating a little bit, folks, because I'm so tired. I'm using notes from whatever the fuck, from some Bleacher Report did their rankings. All right, so the next match, Nick Kamaroto taking on Lance Archer. Now, this Nick guy is a real hoss. He's a real old school 1980s looking pro wrestler. I think I saw Dustin Rhodes beat this guy, Nick Kamaroto, in a fucking bull rope match last summer at Daly's place. This is actually not a bad match. A couple of big hosses. Strictly an AEW versus AEW match. No Japanese representation in this one. Lance Archer wins. Bleacher gave it a B-. I might give it a C+. Give it a C+. The next thing, Swerve Strickland and Keith Lee, bask in our swerve, I guess they call themselves, or swerve in our glory. We're taking on, Yoshinobu Kanemaru and El Desperado. I thought El Desperado was kind of cool looking. This Japanese guy had a cool outfit. I believe he was masked. Just kind of a cool look. Not much to say about this match. Bleacher gave it a B. I probably give it a C+, B-, something like that. It happened. I do wonder if Keith Lee is being regulated to tag team matches because he did have COVID. So some folks have long-term COVID effects, and maybe it's better for Keith Lee to be in tag team matches for the foreseeable future. There's also so many wrestlers now in AEW that I think, if Swerve and Keith kind of carve out a niche in this tag team division, maybe that's for the good, and maybe they'll challenge the Young Bucks pretty soon, or perhaps FTR. We'll get to them later. God. Now we had a pretty funny match. This was my soda match. I went to get a soda during this beginning of this thing. I stuck around for the rap. I do like the Acclaim quite a bit. This is a tag team that comes out to the ring. They do a little rap. I didn't realize that one of the Acclaim guys is a homosexual, but he has this PSA, a public service announcement, of which he's proclaiming his homosexuality and how he's a pro wrestling homosexual and how proud he is, and everybody's fine with it. So AEW does a lot of that type of stuff, kind of, I think, because they want to. First of all, they want to be a very inclusionary group of wrestlers, and also I think in a subtle way they're trying to differentiate themselves from the WWE, because as we know, the WWE does business in Saudi Arabia, where homosexuality, public displays of homosexuality are punished by death. So yes, I mean, there's always something more to what you see, right? But the Acclaimed and the Ass Boys, as they're called, funnily enough, took on Yuya Uemura Alex Coughlin, the DKC, and Kevin Knight. It was basically a 4-on-4 match. I think the storyline of the match was that the two ass boys, the two sons of Billy Gunn, bailed on their father and on Max, and left Max and Billy to fight for themselves, and they actually won anyway. So I thought that was interesting. I think we're definitely headed to a feud between the Gun Boys and the Acclaimed once the gentleman in the Acclaimed is healed and he can team up with his buddy again. I think the Acclaimed are going to have a big babyface run in AEW in 2023 and hopefully get that tag team title at some point or something. So I don't know. They gave it a C. I guess I gave it a C+. Let me flip the next thing here. Okay, so the official show started with really, and here's the thing. My buddy Joe Cronin's doing a broadcast tonight about this thing. He's saying what I'm about to say. The crowd was hot. The Chicago crowd was really into this show, and they loved it. And Chris Jericho, Sammy Guevara, and Suzuki taking on Eddie Kingston, Yuta, and Umino. Sorry, I'm getting all the names wrong. It was just a pretty awesome match. They gave it a B+. I might give it an A-. It was a lot of fun, probably more fun than this match had a right to be. It was almost like, man, this could have been a main event type of match. There was a lot of excitement, a lot of twists and turns. Interesting that Suzuki was kind of on the heel side. He's very popular with the fans. But Jericho's also very popular with the fans, despite the fact that he's always trying to be a heel now. But in any event, the heels did win, which gives them the advantage going into Blood and Guts. That's a whole other shtick. So that was fun. Let's see, buddy. The next thing, wow, what a long show this was, folks, because I didn't realize that this match was second on the show. It all became kind of a blur, to be honest with you. Roppongi Vice versus United Empire versus FTR for the Ring of Honor and IWGP Tag Team titles. We've got Trent Beretta, we've got Jeff Cobb and Great O'Khan, we've got Dax Harwood and Cash Wheeler. Some really good wrestlers in this match. Here's the thing that's confusing to me. I don't know. I mean, I'm thinking that the injury to Uncle Dax Harwood was just a work. It was just storyline stuff. Basically, they did an injury thing where, pretty early in the match, maybe 5 or 10 minutes into the match, Dax Harwood got this apparent shoulder injury, like suddenly he couldn't move his arm. And it's like, did he pop his shoulder out of its socket? What happened to this guy? They bring him out of the match. They drag him to the dressing room. It's kind of, and look, they do this a lot in wrestling. They kind of fake a shoot, like, oh, the guy's hurt, so he can't continue, but then he does. So he's gone for about 10 or 12 minutes, I'd say. His buddy Cash Wheeler's got a fight on his own, kind of teaming up with Trent and the other guy, the fucking pirate guy, against these Jeff Cobb and Great O'Khan, who are the IWGP Tag Team Champions. So I thought it was an interesting thing, but here's the deal, folks. FTR is such a good tag team. They really are great wrestlers. I'd rather have seen them in a 2-on-2 match. If they had to fight, these two fucks, Jeff Cobb and Great O'Khan, just 2-on-2, I think that would have been better. Apparently, Roppongi Vice was in there to eat the pin, which they did. But they really, no offense to those guys, they're good athletes, blah, blah, blah. They just didn't do much for me being in this match. And the storyline of Dax getting injured and then coming back at House of Fire, and suddenly his shoulder is magically healed. It just didn't work for me. I thought this might have been my most disappointing match of the night, which kind of sucks because I really like FTR, but I think because they wanted to get the victory to FTR and they still wanted to protect Cobb and Great O'Khan, first off, they had Roppongi Vice in the match to take the pin. And then they did this storyline shtick of the injury, the phantom injury, which to me didn't seem very convincing, if nothing else, because Dax Harwood comes in and he's using both arms regularly. Didn't really even sell the arm being injured. And when I say sell, Jeff, and for others who may not know, that means to, promote that the arm is injured, like acting. So basically, it didn't work for me. Probably my biggest disappointment of the night, to be honest with you. I give it a C plus. For the result, I give it a plus, but I don't think it was a great match. I mean, it wasn't a dog shit match. It was better than Magnificent Morocco versus Iron Mike Sharp in 1988 on WWF Superstars, but it wasn't as good as it could have been, in my opinion. Blah 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 blah. This Bleacher Report says they love Harwood and whatever the fuck, Cash Wheeler. Okay, here's the next match. Pac versus Miro versus Malachi Black versus Clark Connors. By the way, I want to make note of this Bleacher Report. Whoever wrote this says AEW needs to get a title on Trent at some point. He has been such a reliable performer for so long. I'm just going to go down a side trail, guys. That's the problem with a lot of pro wrestling fans or a lot of pro wrestling thinkers or writers, is that they try to award loyalty and perseverance and sticking around with championships. It shouldn't be like that. I mean, that's the type of stuff that Natalia Neidhart, she's been around forever, but nobody cares. Michael Cole has been doing commentary forever, but he's not any better than he was in 1999. So, having a job that you are only average or slightly above average at for a long time does not make you good. It just makes you tenured, okay? So, no offense to Trent Beretta. He's fine. I would kind of put him on the Frankie Kazarian level, like a lower mid-card maniac veteran, a good hand, as they say. Sean Spears, take note. But I don't think that Trent Beretta needs a title. He doesn't. Sorry. He doesn't deserve it because he's not going to put asses in seats. That's just reality kicking you in the face. So, sorry, Mr. fucking whatever the fuck Bleacher Report writer, even though I'm using all your notes. Thank you. This All-Atlantic title, I still don't understand why we need this All-Atlantic title. It's just another fucking belt in AEW that you don't need. But you had Pac versus Miro versus Malachi Black versus Clark Connors. Clark Connors became kind of the underdog, babyface of the whole affair. People got into him. He had some good moments. He was a last-minute substitute to be in this match. It was a four-way match where the first guy to score a pin or submission on somebody would get the title. Interesting way to do a title. This would be the first of 2 4-man matches for singles title, which I had a bit of an issue with. To be honest, there was a lot of 6-man tags, 8-man, like 4-on-4 tag matches, 8-man tags, a lot of clusterfuck matches on this show, not a whole lot of traditional 1-on-1 or tag team matches. I kind of would have liked to have gone that way. I know they wanted to load up the talent and get everybody a little taste of everything. And I thought that worked because it did feel like a kind of an all-star show or an all-star showcase. Kind of like the feelings of the original Survivor Series, where you just, have all these people wrestling and you get little slivers of everybody's best stuff. But so I think for what it was, this whole show was fun. It was, I enjoyed it a lot. I'm just saying that as far as was this canon? Was this essential? I don't know. I mean, the jury's still out. But we did have some title changes, so I guess it is. All-Atlantic Championship. I was pulling for Malachi Black. I predicted he would win, and I was wrong. Pac won the championship, which I think is interesting and good for him. And I think he got it with a submission over the Connors guy, didn't he? So I thought that was cool in a sense, but Pac has had some issues, I believe, with his citizenship. I mean, isn't he Irish legitimately? And Dublin, Ireland, and sometimes he has issues with his travel visas and work visas, and so there's been times when he's been booked for major AEW shows and quite frankly not shown up, and it's been disappointing, you know what I mean? So I feel like, why are they putting a title on this guy? Because if he's booked to defend it and he can't show up because another one of these travel issues, or maybe that's all clear now because we're in 2022 and not 2020. What's next? I thought it was a good match. Probably the match that worked the best for what it was, like of the show, all these cluster matches, like the multiple man matches. If you remember WrestleMania 15, actually WrestleMania 2000, which was WrestleMania 16, there was no men's singles match on that show at all. I mean, you had a fatal four-way, Mankind, Triple H, Rock, and the Big Show for the WWF title. You had the Hardys and the Dudleys and Edge and Christian for the tag team title in the ladder match, but you didn't have any traditional male one-on-one matches. The only one-on-one match you had on that show, I believe, was Sable defending the women's title. Hey, I appreciate that, famous mister. I appreciate you being here, buddy. I like that profile pic you have there. So what's next? Yeah, but I mean, look, putting the belt on Pac, he's a good wrestler. I'd like to see him and Malachi go at it some more. I know they've been feuding. What tends to happen with AEW, because they've got such a packed roster, is you're not really getting a whole lot of, Tully Blanchard versus Magnum TA type of feuds in AEW, simply because they've got like a revolving door of talent they have to put on TV. I think the closest thing we saw to that was the MJF CM Punk feud. But if you think about it, I think they only had two matches. They had the dog collar match and they had the regular match. The regular match came first. I'm talking about Punk and MJF. So they had the regular match on free TV, and then the pay-per-view was the dog collar match. And that was two matches for a feud that, if they wanted to, they could have been a Magnum TA Tully Blanchard feud. They could have extended that for 5-6 months. Eddie Kingston and CM Punk only had one match. I thought that was a mistake. I thought they should have had Eddie Punk upset CM Punk and win, but they didn't do that. So anyway, that's one complaint I have about AEW. Sometimes they don't milk things, and I know that the other end of the extreme is WWE, where they have rematch after rematch after rematch. But I think with AEW, sometimes they move on too quickly from storylines that are pretty good. So that's just my opinion. You guys are welcome to state any opinions you like. I'll put the banner back in. So that was probably an A-. Bleacher Report gives it an A-. I'll give it an A- to be nice. The Bullet Club versus Dudes with Attitudes. Interesting kind of match here. Cool beginning with Darby Allin kind of being the decoy and a fake Sting, I assume, showing up in the bleachers of the United Center. And then like the real Sting appearing and doing a flying body press. The guy's 62 years old, I believe, and still doing flying body presses, still taking super kicks, still giving the Stinger neck breaker thing. I mean, you talk about Ric Flair having a last match. I mean, Sting looks like he wants to be in this thing until he's old and gray as well. But anyway, it was a cool match. Young Bucks, El Phantasmo, another guy from the New Japan Pro Wrestling side of things, to be honest, that I wish I had seen a little bit more of. Hi, how you doing there? Nice name. I'm trying to figure this out. Elias Tataka. How you doing? I don't know if you're in Japan, perhaps. I don't mean to prejudge based on the name. It sounds like it could be a pretty interesting Japanese handle or Japanese name, or maybe you're just in Detroit, Michigan. Who knows? But thanks for being here. And if you have any comments on this show, if you watched or if you didn't watch, feel free to comment. So I thought the Bullet Club versus Dudes with Attitudes, kind of similar to the opener, the Chris Jericho 6-man, very similar as a matter of fact. Just a wild, crazy, everybody gets their specialty moves in. Everybody has fun. A lot of storyline shtick. Matt Jackson is actually a really good storyteller. I'm pretty late to the Young Bucks thing. Like, I've criticized the Young Bucks for years. My buddy Faid Saeed, always a good commentator. Thanks for commenting. And Fad Saeed liked my, I hope I'm saying your name right. He liked my blood bank video. I went to the blood bank on Friday and I gave blood, and I actually feel fine. I don't feel any worse. I found out my blood type as well. That's kind of the secret reason why I gave blood, because I wanted to know my blood type. And the normal doctor won't tell you your blood type. You have to pay for that. But if you donate blood and you get this little fucking piece of paper with a code, you can go online and the next day find out like your stats, like how good your blood is and all this shit and all these numbers. And they tell you your blood type. So I know my blood type now. Very excited because now I can go to sleep at night knowing my blood type. In case anybody needs to know. So the Bullet Club versus the Dudes with Attitudes, fun match. Takagi was able to get the win for his team by pinning Connors. Yeah, I mean, Shingo Takagi, believe it or not, I think I've actually seen him wrestle live. I went to a Dragon Gate Pro Wrestling show. It was an internet pay-per-view. There was some fucking names on this show. I mean, the first guy that really Akabono. Do you remember that WrestleMania sumo match between Akabono and the Big Show? Akabono was actually at this fucking show in Fall River, Massachusetts, and I was really close to him for a second or two. Big fucking guy. Brody Lee, unfortunately, who's passed away. Brody Lee was on that show. This really cool independent tag team at the time. It was like a pharaoh, like a snake charmer, and like the Egyptian guy and a snake charmer. It was a really interesting team. They used to like do some gimmicky spots where they'd kind of like hypnotize their opponents. But they were there. I think they actually wrestled Akabono and Brody Lee, to be honest with you. It was a very unique situation. And I believe in this, and who else? Homicide showed up at that show. A young John Moxley was there. Yes, not Dean Ambrose, but John Moxley was there. It was an internet pay-per-view, I believe 2010, 2011 from Fall River, Massachusetts from Dragon Gate Pro USA. Point is, Shingo Takagi, I believe, was in the main event that night, and I believe he defended a title and kept it. I could be wrong. Anyway, this was a fun match. They gave it a B. I'll pretty much say the same thing, a B. Darby Allin, yeah, interesting to see. They said this is the first time Darby Allin and the Young Bucks were ever in the ring together. I thought that was interesting. I was also thinking, guys, and maybe if anyone knows the answer to this, has Darby Allin ever wrestled Orange Cassidy? And I was sporting the Orange Cassidy T-shirt tonight, out of respect. But has Orange Cassidy and Darby Allin ever interacted or not? Maybe during the Empty Arena era they did. I just can't remember. Okay, so I'm not going to agree with this at all. The next thing, according to these notes, was the women's title match, AEW women's title match. Thunder Rosa defending against Toni Storm. This guy gave it an A-. I don't see that at all. I'd say more like a C+. It was a decent match. It was a fine match. It was kind of a double babyface women's title match, handshaking and all that good stuff. There was nothing wrong with this match. I can't say there was an A-. I don't know what this guy is thinking. Obviously, Bleacher Report, I believe they're in on this pay-per-view stuff, right? Like, can't you get the pay-per-view off of Bleacher Report? So they obviously are going to grade these things higher than they should be. To me, it was a fine match, a decent match. I would say this. Toni Storm is a gorgeous woman. I can see why she's so popular. I mean, because she's very fucking pretty. I mean, she's got the traditional, pretty face, pretty body, all that shit, blonde. And Thunder Rosa is very cute as well in her own way. She does cover herself with the makeup, but I've met Thunder Rosa, nice lady, she's a huge women's wrestling advocate. She runs Mission Pro Wrestling. They had a big show at the Taco Festival in Jacksonville last summer, and I actually taped some of their matches. Slamovich, the women's wrestler, Markita Slamovich or Nikita Slamovich, and others. So if you look on my Taco Fest 2021, you can see Chris Jericho and Fozzy performing. I've actually been to a Fozzy concert now, believe it or not. And I saw this Mission Pro Wrestling, and I taped 2 or 3 of their matches. Let's see what else. So I don't know. That match to me, I hate to say it, but I will. I mean, I like Thunder Rosa a lot, but it's kind of that issue sometimes with babyface champions. Unless they're really good, sometimes it's harder to cheer for a babyface to keep a title than for them to go out and win it. And I think that might be just the traditional age-old thing with babyface champions, that Thunder Rosa in the great tradition of Bob Backlund, another babyface champion that might have struggled, or even a John Cena in more recent representation. The babyface champion, it's tough because as a wrestling fan, especially at the live show, you want to cheer for a title change. But if you're cheering for a title change and it's a babyface champion, you're basically booing against the babyface. So in any event, Thunder Rosa retains. I didn't know what to think. So they gave this next match an A plus. That's pretty strong. I would probably give it an A, but actually a very better than I thought it would be. I thought it would be fun. Will Ospreay versus Orange Cassidy, yes, and Orange Cassidy is another guy, kind of like the Young Bucks, that I've come around to. Look, repetition. Watching somebody over and over again, you either like them more or you despise them more. Like, your opinions don't really change; they just get more concentrated. And but I'll say this: Orange Cassidy, I never really understood him, but then I just kind of just said I get it. Like, he's kind of making fun of himself, but at the same time having fun. And as long as he doesn't overdo it with the psychology and like stuff like this, where tonight he gives these pitter pat kicks to Will Ospreay's head and Will Ospreay doesn't sell it. And the commentator, I think it was Taz, actually did a nice job of explaining, like, it's not that he's actually trying to hurt these guys with these pitter pat kicks. It's a psychological warfare. Very good. I don't think Jim Ross or Shivani ever tried to explain it like that. Maybe they have, and I just forgot. But I thought it was a really good match. It was a lot of fun. Here's the thing. Will Ospreay is another example of, like, I'm a big wrestling fan, that I'm more old school than new school, but Will Ospreay I've been hearing about for 5 or 6 or 7 years. I don't think until he started wrestling in AEW did I ever sit down and watch a fucking Will Ospreay match. I've seen his highlights against Ricochet. It looked like, choreographed swimming to me. Now that I see Will Ospreay, he looks like the missing Cunningham brother from Happy Days. I mean, Chuck Cunningham, if you remember him, he was on like 2 episodes, and that's what Will Ospreay reminds me of. Like, did Chuck Cunningham leave Happy Days and become Will Ospreay in Japan? But in any event, he doesn't. I wouldn't say he doesn't do much for me. I'd say maybe I just haven't seen enough of him yet, and I definitely haven't seen his best work. I'm talking about Ospreay. And the fact that AEW had him come in and lose these 6-man tag team matches on Rampage and so forth, that wasn't a good way to start the guy. So maybe I just haven't given Ospreay enough of a chance, but he hasn't impressed me that much until tonight. And I thought that Orange Cassidy, it was pretty much a foregone conclusion that Orange Cassidy would be doing the honors, losing. Because Orange Cassidy's got such a cool gimmick, he doesn't need to win matches. I mean, that's a cool babyface gimmick when you're so over that you can put other guys over, like lose to guys all the time, and nobody cares, because it's still Orange Cassidy. He's going to come back and give his little half thumb and all that shit. And I thought it was a fun match, a lot of, 2.5s and stuff. I wondered, is Ospreay kind of like Kurt Hennig, or is it Hennig? Is Will Ospreay one of these guys that gives too much? That's a little Mandela effect shot out there with the Hennig thing. But I actually watched a recent 1987 wrestling show, and Kurt Hennig was on the show, and the commentator actually said, Kurt Hennig, a lot of people think his name is Hennig, but it's Hennig. Anyway, it's a whole big goddamn thing about Kurt Hennig. Anyway, but Kurt Hennig would always put guys like over. He would sell their moves. Dolph Ziggler does the same thing. Always make the other guy look really good. But the problem with that is sometimes you don't get to make yourself look good. And I think Will Ospreay might be doing a little bit of that, but maybe that's why people like him so much. But anyway, I still have to work up to that guy. So Jim Ross comes out and starts doing commentary. Um, they really put this thing over on Bleacher Report. They gave it an A plus. Like I said, I'd probably give it an A. Okay, so the next thing we have is the whole deal with Daniel Bryan's injured. Someone's going to take his place. It's supposed to be a new member of the fucking Liverpool Combat Club. And did I get that right? Liverpool Combat Club. Yeah, the Paul, fucking Ringo, Pete Best, and John Lennon. But it was actually Zack Sabre Jr. taking on the mystery opponent. And I think Meltzer and everybody else kind of, put their finger in the air like Babe Ruth hitting the home run, that it was going to be Claudio Castagnoli coming back to the non-WWE world of pro wrestling after, 8 or 9 years with the E. And here he is. So Claudio looked a little thicker around the belly. I mean, look, obviously the guy's in great shape. He's in better shape than I've ever been in. But he's probably got an extra 10 or 15 pounds of couch belly, just because he hasn't been training as much. And he looked jacked up. He looked all muscular. But he had a little bit of, not to say that it wasn't even a belly. Just I'm used to Claudio or Cesaro being so ripped. Wasn't quite as ripped, but still as good. And I think he can, lose that extra 10 pounds in no time once he starts wrestling again. And I think it's good. I think he's going to be a welcome force to AEW, a welcomed wrestler. Cornette's talked about this, Jim Cornette. A lot of these AEW wrestlers, like the hardcore people, like the Librarian Peter Avalon, and even teams like the Acclaimed or the Ass Boys, they have to be getting a little bit nervous when they start getting like Claudio's in there and Bryan Danielson's and CM Punk. Imagine if Dolph Ziggler came over. I mean, to join his brother in AEW. So anyway, Claudio did really well. I was actually kind of surprised that they had him go over Sabre. And I just say that because look, I'm not the New Japan Pro Wrestling advocate, but I think that they were I don't want to say they were totally sacrificed tonight, but it didn't seem like they won many of the big ones, like the big matches. It seemed like this was definitely an AEW home stand type of thing. And I know that it was Claudio's debut. They called it an AEW debut. So this really was like an AEW show with New Japan as their guests, as opposed to a group show, I would say. But even though you had Kevin Kelly doing commentary and so forth, I mean, it's never going to be 50-50 down the board with this type of thing. I mean, I'm going back to Super Clash 3. If you remember, like, Eric Embry beats Jeff Jarrett for the light heavyweight title, and then fucking Jerry Lawler beats Kerry Von Erich for the world title. So, I mean, you can't really have it be 50-50 and for it to all work. I just don't know if Zack Sabre should have been sacrificed. What if Zack Sabre had won somehow? And, I mean, I think the fans would have still given Claudio a big pop, even if he lost. I think, I guess we're just used to Claudio or Cesaro losing, and people still like him. So I just thought it was more important if you were going to establish some of these New Japan guys to the AEW audience, if there's going to be more interactions. I think Sabre should have gone over, but who the fuck am I to say? I mean, I'm just me. All these matches. They gave it an A plus. That's a little strong. I might give it an A minus. The Claudio Castillo Zack Sabre, I'll give it like a B plus. But I was also, to be honest with you, I started to watch the NHL finals on my phone. I had the ESPN Plus app, and I wanted to know what the fuck was happening with the Stanley Cup. So I was like sitting in the goddamn movie theater watching pro wrestling, 40 feet of pro wrestling images, and I got my little phone watching the Stanley Cup. And I got my fucking earphones and the whole goddamn 9 yards. So I had a good time tonight. Then we have this interesting match for the IWGP World Title that's been around for a long time, maybe 46 years. Okada, the Rainmaker. I actually have an Okada t-shirt somewhere. Versus Hangman Adam Page, versus Adam Cole versus Jay White. People are concerned. They're thinking that this didn't mention it, but my buddy Joe Cronin was mentioning it. Was Adam Cole injured tonight? Was Adam Cole hurt? And did he take the pin because they had to wrap up the match real quick? It looked like Adam Cole tried to kick out or move his shoulder up as he was getting pinned, but the referee called the pin. Did he get a little concussion? Did he get a concussion? Did he get a stinger? I'm talking about Adam Cole. There was some people that kind of helped him get up, or helped him roll out of the ring. So I think it's possible to say that he got like maybe a stinger, which is kind of like a momentarily paralysis. Pretty scary stuff for the wrestlers. Steve Austin had a stinger at that SummerSlam 97 pile driver thing with Owen Hart. Maybe he had a concussion. But in any event, the thing with this, once again, look, I've heard about all the Okada, Kenny Omega matches. I'll be honest with you, I've never sat there and watched those matches, mainly because of Kenny Omega and my feelings about him at the time. But I wanted to see more of Okada. I wanted to see what the great thing about this guy is. I should have mentioned that Shintobi came out to face Will Ospreay before this. I wanted to see more of Okada. He did get some stuff in, but anytime you have these 4-man matches, the guys that really get more in there are kind of like the heels, Adam Cole and Switchblade Jay White kind of dominated this match from a storyline perspective because they were teaming up, they were fighting each other. I had no problems with this match. It's just, like I said, a lot of the same stuff, a lot of clusterfuck matches. And if you go back to the earlier match with Miro and Malachi Black and Pac and the Connors guy, this one was actually like the second best 4-person singles men's match of the night. You know what I mean? Like, if you had to compare, the other match that Pac won was better, I thought. But anyway, Jay White wins this thing. Like I said, if you look at this show more of as like an all-star show, like an all-star game, that's probably the way of looking at this, even though titles run the line. So like I said, it's kind of a mix. And then finally, after all these fucking matches, I mean, I think we're like at 12 or 13 or 14 matches for the night. We get to Jon Moxley versus Hiroshi Tanahashi. And I thought it was a good match. I think it was double babyface match. It started off, it was like they weren't trying to, how do you say it? They weren't trying to make it seem like a grudge match at all, which I guess is fine. It was kind of like a respect thing. Like Moxley wanted Tanahashi's respect as being an ace, which means like a top wrestler who can deliver great matches against anybody. So I thought, it made Moxley look good. Moxley juiced or bled, as you would say. It looked like a pretty fierce bleeding, which added some drama to the events. He bled, but he also won. A good match. I don't know if it was a great match. I mean, the crowd, like we've said, has really helped this whole show tonight. I thought it was fine. I don't know if it was that great, but once Moxley won, I thought we were going to get CM Punk coming out, if nothing else because it's in Chicago, but just to kind of remind us that there's still business left, whether it's 6 months or 9 months or 3 months for CM Punk to come back to what we think is a foot injury. I thought it might have been cool if CM Punk, in living color, blared up and CM Punk comes out and he's got his belt and Moxley's got his belt and Moxley's offended that CM Punk is stealing his moment. They didn't do that. They went another way. Instead, they had a run-in they had like kind of Moxley and Tanahashi looking at each other like they were going to shake hands. And then they get attacked by Daniel Garcia and Chris Jericho, which pushes the whole blood and guts match for this coming Wednesday. I'll be honest, I'm confused. Who the fuck is in this blood and guts match? I mean, it's basically Chris Jericho's team versus Moxley's team. So it's Moxley, Cesaro taking Daniel Bryan's spot. Is it Eddie Kingston and Santana and Ortiz? Is that the 5-man against the Jericho Appreciation Society? So yeah, but then Tanahashi was just kind of still standing around, So it was one of these things where you're serving many masters, and I think they broached it as good as they could, as well as they could. But you're always going to have a few loose ends in this thing when you're trying to push. Like the pay-per-view was actually promoting the Dynamite, which was kind of interesting, kind of old school WCW, when like a pay-per-view would end and tune in tomorrow night to Nitro. So they kind of did that here, and it wasn't bad, but it wasn't particularly good either, if that makes any sense. Like it just kind of felt like, okay, you're trying to hook us in for Wednesday night on the rare chance that some people tune into this thing, this pay-per-view, but don't watch Dynamite on a weekly basis. I mean, there's always going to be one or two people out there that, oh, there's a wrestling show going on at the movie theater or this pay-per-view. Let me order this. And they had no idea about AEW or New Japan. I suppose there's one or two people like that in the world. So if you left the pay-per-view with this hook for your Wednesday night program, then I guess it was worth it. I just don't know if the numbers would really justify that. The numbers being the amount of people that would be in that situation that I just imagined. I remember like last AEW pay-per-view, like Tony Khan was so proud of himself because he made the show really long, and he got people who were watching the NBA game that night. It was a playoff game with the Celtics in Game 7 of the East Championship, and he made a big hoo-ha-ha about how they made the pay-per-view really long so that some people would tune in after the basketball game. I don't know if he was having the same type of aneurysm tonight with an NHL Stanley Cup Game 6. It turned out to be a deciding game, as a matter of fact, but I guess not. I mean, because quite frankly, hockey is not nearly as popular as basketball, at least in the United States. In Canada, I'm sure it is more popular. But in any event, that's your show, folks. I had a good time watching it. I had fun. It was something I was looking forward to the whole weekend, just looking forward to it. And glad I went. I have that AMC, I believe it's American Movie Club or whatever, the movie theater AMC had this thing on the big screen. I have the A-List pass, which is like their subscriber deal. And I got my ticket for $14. Normally it's $25. I don't know if they gave me an $11 discount because they like me or because I'm a subscriber. I was expecting to pay the $25. It was only $14 and change, paying through the app. So once again, I always say in Mike's Instant Movie Reviews, if you want to support the film industry, please get a subscription to Regal Cinemas or AMC or Cinemark, because you get these points and the tickets are much cheaper and they have the subscription plans. So overall, as far as the fun factor goes, I mean, I think this show delivered. I think a lot of people were kind of trepidatious about ordering this show or watching it because the buildup wasn't that good. But to me, it's kind of like in the theater world, and Jeff, if you're still here, you know this. If you have a bad rehearsal, sometimes you have a great show. Like that's kind of the rule of theater: lousy rehearsal, great show. And I felt like this was kind of that. Like to try and shoehorn a bunch of storylines and angles, and also the show is snake bit with injuries, which I believe Max Caster in his rap mentioned the injuries. He's threatening that there'd be 4 more injuries of the opponents. But I thought with all those obstacles and challenges and considerations, I think that once again they delivered. They being AEW, particularly the wrestlers. Look, folks, I know I'm involved in all the Facebook wrestling drama and the Twitter wrestling world and all this shit. WWE fans versus AEW fans and so forth. But for me, I like the fact that there's this alternative. No offense, but WWE would never do a show like this. I mean, the closest they probably came was the Women's Revolution or Women's Evolution show they did once as a one-off. They haven't done that again. So, I mean, just something different. If you think back to Super Super Clash 3, the AEW World Class Championship Wrestling, Tennessee Wrestling, Powerful Women of Wrestling, December 13th, 1988, also in Chicago, by the way. If you had seen that, you kind of know, like, I'm kind of into these shows that have different wrestlers from different groups. There was another one AWA did, I think, Wrestle Rock 86, where they had a bunch of Japanese guys like Shoei Baba and a bunch of cool guys coming over. Kerry Von Erich versus Jimmy Garvin, I think, was on that show. They had a couple of shows. I might be merging some of them, but they had a Comiskey Park show. Here in Florida, they had this Super Bowl of wrestling that unfortunately got a lot of rain on it. I think it was Superstar Billy Graham versus Harley Race, WWF title versus NWA title. And unfortunately, it rained. So, I mean, that kind of put a damper on things, so to speak. But I like these interpromotional super shows. Crockett Cup 87, you can watch my video about that. I like things where they have different matches, and it feels a little old school, like guys have to call it in the ring. And I just prefer that. You know, I mean, if you're going to show me Braun Strowman versus Roman Reigns 20 times in 2017, where they're doing the same type of, you know, big man muscle match, I'm not going to be into it. But this type of shit, I'm more into. Some of the guys, for instance, the Jay White guy, I'm not really seeing him as this fucking awesome wrestler that he's supposed to be. You know what I mean? Like there was certain guys. I guess I was hoping to get more informed about the New Japan wrestlers, and I don't know if I got that from this show, with maybe the exception of Ospreay. But Okada, I would have liked to have seen more of. I would have liked to have seen more of I guess Jay White. I don't know. I mean, once again, you're trying to serve a lot of masters, trying to get a lot of guys a payday, trying to put, 12 pounds of shit in a 10-pound bag, as we say in the film world. But overall, I still had a fun time. I had a great time watching it. Thank you guys. If you're still with me watching this, if you had any final words, feel free to show them in. If not, it's 1:23 in the morning. I did have a fun day of promoting my book, The Distance from Avalon. My book. I had a fun time promoting my book and all that good stuff today. So it's on Amazon if you want to buy the hard copy or not. That's it, folks. So I'll let you go. And thank you very much for tuning in. See you next time. Subscribe to Mike Messier YouTube channel. Goodbye.